Why people hate you, even when you're kind to them. This is my life lesson. Have you ever spent years treating people with kindness, only to discover that some of them ended up disliking you anyway? I know that question sounds strange, especially to those of us who were raised to believe that if we treated others well, they would eventually treat us well in return. I believed that for most of my life. In fact, I held on to that belief long after experience should have taught me otherwise. Now that I am an old man, with more years behind me than ahead of me, I can tell you something I wish someone had explained to me when I was younger. Sometimes people do not dislike you because you were cruel. Sometimes they dislike you because you were kind. That realization took me decades to understand. When I was a younger man, I always tried to be helpful. If someone needed assistance, I offered it. If a friend was struggling, I listened. If a family member made mistakes, I forgave them. I thought kindness would strengthen relationships. Sometimes it did, but sometimes the opposite happened. There were people I helped repeatedly who eventually spoke badly about me. There were people I defended who later criticized me. There were people I supported during their hardest seasons who seemed strangely irritated whenever I succeeded or remained positive. For years, I asked myself what I had done wrong. I replayed conversations in my head. I wondered whether I had accidentally offended them. I searched for explanations that would make sense of the situation. But as time passed and I observed human nature more carefully, I began noticing a pattern. The problem was not always something I had done. Often the problem was something my behavior reminded them about themselves. One of the hardest truths about life is that people do not always see you as you are. Very often they see you through the lens of their own struggles, fears, regrets, and insecurities. A person who feels comfortable with themselves can usually appreciate kindness. A person who is carrying a heavy burden of self-disappointment may react very differently. I remember a man I knew many years ago. He was intelligent, capable, and talented, but he carried a deep bitterness inside him. Whenever someone offered encouragement, he became suspicious. Whenever someone showed patience, he assumed there must be a hidden motive. At first, I thought he was simply difficult. Later, I realized he had spent so many years disappointed in himself that genuine kindness made him uncomfortable. Instead of receiving it, he questioned it. Instead of appreciating it, he resisted it. As I grew older, I started noticing this pattern everywhere. Some people would rather believe that everyone is selfish than accept the possibility that someone might genuinely care. Why? Because if genuine kindness exists, then they must confront questions they have been avoiding. They must ask themselves why they have become cynical. They must examine wounds they have spent years hiding. They must acknowledge choices they regret. And many people would rather protect an old story than face an uncomfortable truth. The older I get, the more convinced I become that human beings spend a great deal of energy protecting their view of themselves. We all create identities. We tell ourselves who we are. Some people see themselves as victims. Some see themselves as tough survivors. Some see themselves as people who never need help. Some see themselves as people who have life figured out. Then someone comes along and quietly challenges that story. Not through criticism, not through arguments, not through judgment, simply through the way they live. A patient person reminds an angry person that another way of living exists. A forgiving person reminds a resentful person that they could let go. A kind person reminds a bitter person that bitterness is not the only option, and those reminders are not always welcomed. Many years ago, I made the mistake of believing that everyone wanted to grow. I thought everyone wanted healing. I thought everyone wanted peace. But age taught me otherwise. Many people say they want change, yet what they really want is comfort. They want relief without transformation. They want better results without facing difficult truths. When your life quietly demonstrates those truths, some people feel inspired, others feel threatened. That does not mean you are better than them. It simply means your presence forces them to look at something they would rather avoid. I learned another lesson that took me far too long to understand. Sometimes people attack qualities they secretly admire. I know that sounds strange, but I have seen it happen countless times. They call kindness weakness because admitting its strength would force them to examine their own behavior. They call patience foolish because admitting its value would challenge their impulsiveness. They dismiss compassion as naivety because acknowledging its power would expose how guarded they have become. I have watched people mock virtues they desperately wished they possessed. At first, their criticism hurt me. I took it personally. I believed their words reflected my worth. But eventually, I realized their reactions often revealed more about their internal struggles than about my character. That understanding changed my life. It allowed me to stop carrying burdens that never belonged to me. Now, let me be honest with you. There is another side to this conversation that many people do not like discussing. Not all kindness is genuine. I learned this lesson the hard way too. For years, I thought I was simply a generous person. I thought I was helping because I cared. In many situations, that was true. But, if I am completely honest, there were moments when my kindness carried expectations attached to it. I wanted appreciation. I wanted loyalty. I wanted people to recognize my sacrifices. I wanted them to value me because of everything I had done for them. The problem was that I rarely admitted those expectations to myself. When people failed to respond the way I hoped, disappointment followed. Resentment quietly appeared. And that forced me to ask a difficult question. Was I being kind because it reflected who I was? Or was I being kind because I wanted something in return? That question changed everything, because genuine kindness does not operate like a business transaction. It is not an investment waiting for a payoff. It is not a strategy for earning approval. It is not a tool for controlling how others see you. Real kindness comes from fullness, not emptiness. When you are trying to fill an emotional void through good deeds, people often sense it, even if they cannot explain why. They feel the pressure beneath the generosity. They feel the hidden need for validation. And sometimes that creates tension in relationships that neither person fully understands. As I entered my later years, I began paying closer attention to my motives. I stopped asking whether people appreciated my kindness and started asking whether my kindness was authentic. I stopped focusing on how others responded and started focusing on the condition of my own heart. And what I discovered during that period of reflection led me to one of the most important lessons of my entire life. A lesson that completely transformed how I deal with criticism, rejection, and the strange hostility that sometimes appears when you are simply trying to do good. The lesson was this: kindness without boundaries is not always kindness. Sometimes it is fear. Sometimes it is guilt. Sometimes it is a desperate attempt to keep everyone happy. And the truth is, no matter how old you are when you learn this lesson, it can change your life overnight. For a very long time, I confused being kind with being available to everyone. If someone called, I answered. If someone needed help, I stepped in. If someone created problems, I tried to solve them. I believed that was what a good person was supposed to do. But eventually I noticed something troubling. The more I gave without limits, the less some people respected what I gave. Instead of appreciating my generosity, they began expecting it. Instead of valuing my time, they treated it as if it belonged to them. That realization hurt. Not because people disappointed me. Life will always include disappointments. What hurt was recognizing how often I had participated in creating those situations myself. By refusing to set boundaries, I taught certain people that my needs came last. By constantly rescuing others, I encouraged them to rely on me instead of developing their own strength. I know many older people watching this will understand exactly what I mean. Perhaps you spent years taking care of family members. Perhaps you sacrificed for children, siblings, friends, or partners. Perhaps you became the dependable person everyone called during a crisis. And maybe, after all those years, you expected that same care to come back to you one day. Sometimes it does, sometimes it does not. And when it does not, the pain can feel overwhelming. I have met many people in their 70s, 80s, and even 90s who carry quiet heartbreak because they gave everything to others and received very little in return. They are not angry because of the work they did. They are angry because they believed those sacrifices guaranteed loyalty. Life does not work that way. People appreciate what they are capable of appreciating. They give what they are capable of giving. And unfortunately, some people are simply not capable of returning what you gave them. Once I accepted that truth, a strange freedom entered my life. I stopped trying to earn love through sacrifice. I stopped trying to prove my worth through endless generosity. I stopped measuring my value by how useful I was to other people. And something remarkable happened. My kindness actually became stronger, it became cleaner, it became lighter, because it was no longer attached to expectations. When someone appreciated it, I was grateful. When someone did not, I remained at peace. That does not mean rejection stopped hurting. I am an old man, not a saint. Criticism still stings. Betrayal still leaves scars. But those experiences no longer define me the way they once did. Another thing I learned is that some people are deeply attached to their wounds. Now, before anyone misunderstands me, I am not speaking about people who are suffering. We all suffer. We all carry pain. What I am talking about is something different. I am talking about people who have built their entire identity around their suffering. You try to encourage them, and they reject it. You offer support, and they push it away. You present possibilities, and they explain why none of them will work. At first, I used to take that personally. I thought I had failed them somehow. Eventually, I realized something important. You cannot heal someone who is committed to remaining wounded. You cannot force growth upon a person who is invested in staying the same. And you certainly cannot carry another person's emotional responsibilities for them. That was a difficult lesson because helping people made me feel useful. It made me feel needed. It gave me purpose. But there is a difference between helping and rescuing. Helping empowers. Rescuing creates dependence. Helping respects another person's ability to grow. Rescuing quietly assumes they cannot. Once I understood that distinction, many relationships suddenly made sense. I could see why some people had become resentful. I could see why certain patterns repeated themselves over and over. I could see why I kept attracting situations where I felt unappreciated. I had been trying to save people who never asked to be saved. The older I get, the more I admire emotional maturity. Not intelligence, not success, not status, emotional maturity. Because emotionally mature people can receive kindness without feeling threatened by it. They can celebrate another person's strengths without feeling diminished. They can admit mistakes without collapsing into shame. They can accept help without feeling humiliated. Those qualities become increasingly precious as you age, and when you find people who possess them, treasure those relationships. Do not waste your remaining years chasing approval from people who are committed to misunderstanding you. That may sound harsh, but it is one of the greatest gifts age has given me. When I was younger, I wanted everyone to like me. In middle age, I wanted everyone to understand me. Now, in the final chapter of my life, I simply want to be true to myself. That shift changes everything. Because once you stop needing universal approval, you stop being controlled by universal criticism. Someone may dislike you. Someone may question your motives. Someone may invent stories about your intentions. Someone may decide that your kindness must be fake because they cannot imagine it being real. Let them. You do not have to attend every argument you are invited to. You do not have to defend your character to people determined to misunderstand it. You do not have to spend your remaining energy proving your goodness. The people who genuinely know you will recognize your heart. And the people who are committed to misjudging you would not be convinced by 1,000 explanations anyway. One of the most peaceful discoveries of old age is realizing that not every problem requires a response. Sometimes silence is wisdom. Sometimes distance is wisdom. Sometimes walking away is wisdom. And sometimes continuing to be kind without becoming bitter is the greatest wisdom of all. Because bitterness is the trap. That is what life keeps teaching us. If someone treats you poorly and you become cruel in return, then their wounds have multiplied. If someone becomes bitter and you become bitter too, then bitterness has won twice. But if you remain kind while maintaining strong boundaries, something powerful happens. You keep your dignity. You protect your peace. You preserve the best parts of yourself. And that, my friends, is worth more than any argument you could ever win. Looking back across all these decades, I no longer believe the goal of life is to be admired. I do not believe the goal is to be liked by everyone. I do not believe the goal is to convince every person of your good intentions. The goal is much simpler. Become the kind of person who can sleep peacefully at night. Become the kind of person who treats others well without abandoning yourself. Become the kind of person who can give love without demanding control. Become the kind of person who can offer kindness without needing applause. And when people reject that kindness, learn from it rather than being destroyed by it. Very often their reaction is showing you something about their struggles, not your shortcomings. In a strange way, the people who resist your kindness can become unexpected teachers. They reveal where your boundaries are weak. They reveal where your expectations are hidden. They reveal where your self-worth still depends on outside approval. And once you learn those lessons, you become stronger, calmer, and freer. You stop living for recognition. You stop living for validation. You stop living for acceptance. You simply live according to your values. That is where peace begins. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson I can leave behind after all these years. The world does not need less kindness. It needs stronger kindness. Kindness rooted in self-respect. Kindness protected by healthy boundaries. Kindness that remains steady whether it is praised or criticized. If you can develop that kind of kindness, then no amount of misunderstanding can take it away from you. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I truly appreciate you sitting with an old man and listening to the lessons life has taught him over the years. If any part of this conversation spoke to your heart, carry it with you, reflect on it, and share it with someone who may need to hear it. Until next time, take good care of yourself, take good care of the people who genuinely care about you, and most importantly, do not lose the kindness that makes you who you are. Thank you, my friends. I wish you peace, good health, and many meaningful days ahead. Goodbye for now.